My love, sweet queen and noble wife.
Oh God, no! Stop the sound immediately. Wasn't exactly the funeral mass, but otherwise it was pretty on par with the quality of the podcast.
Two should die. 2 eternities in doom. Sorry for everyone listening. Welcome to the Flick Lab. I'm Karri Ojala. I studied media. My co-host is Henrik. He studies at the University of Lapland, amongst the reindeers. How has it been in that godforsaken place?
Well, it's been godforsaken enough for me to continue on this godforsaken podcast, so business as usual, I would say.
Henrik, I heard that you have not seen Dr. Phibes films before.
Yup, shamefully so. I guess that amongst positives, that I have to credit towards the Flick Lab. Finally checking out Dr. Phibes films is amongst one of them.
I remember watching these a long time ago on TV. I can't recall anymore when, but probably like 20 years ago in my teens. And then in one of those horror movie events that I did, we did watch the first Dr. Phibes. We never get around to the second one, but alright.
I have always known that there is a Finnish release of Dr. Phibes films, because I have been aware of the movies under the title names of Vampire's Revenge and The Vampire Rises Again, which is a really odd title choice, seeing how there's nothing vampiric in Dr. Phibes, but, you know, Finnish translations are what they are, and marketing is what it is. But even though they have been around in Finland too, always managed to somehow avoid Dr. Phibes films. And I haven't even tried, because I have always had this kind of curiosity towards seeing the Dr. Phibes movies, knowing that they are beloved cult classics.
Beloved cult classics that are directed by Robert Fust, lived on this planet from 1927 to 2012. And his first feature directing job was Just Like a Woman, 1967. He also wrote it. Then he went on to direct several episodes for The Avengers. And yeah, for the newbies out there, or the people who don't know, this has nothing to do with Marvel, you millennials.
I was expecting when does a Marvel comment rise its head.
Yeah, we've been touching a little bit on the Avengers in the podcast every now and then, because we have had a lot of the Avengers-related actors in this podcast somehow. And
well, it was very prominent English TV series upon its heyday.
It was, and it had some of the biggest names of British cinema, at least.
Yeah, it's kind of same case as, for example, The Saint or Columbo, which were also long-running TV series that kind of became one of those TV products where it was a mark of credibility if you had a role in those shows.
Yeah, this was a British secret agent action TV show, and Robert Fust, maybe he's best known for his black comedy elements, suspense and horror, and maybe best known for the 2 Phibes films, but also for some other horror films, such as The Final Program, 73, and Soon the Darkness from 70. This received praise from critics, apparently, and then The Devil's Reign, which bombed critically in 75. Then he did a lot of TV. Last feature film was Aphrodite from 1982. It's some kind of a softcore sex movie. And then he concentrated on painting, which is his passion, and yada yada yada. Cinematography in the first film is by Norman Warwick. He did Dr. Jekyll and Sister Hyde from 71, The Last Valley 1971, Confessions of a Window Cleaner, and The Young and the Guilty as early as 1958. He was married to Hannah Gordon, a Scottish actress. Alex Thompson is the cinematographer for the second film, maybe the more known DP here, well, obviously, because he was nominated for Academy Award for the Best Cinematography for Excalibur 1981.
Which finally is a film that I have actually seen. Way to go. Once again, covering your background in cinema on a movie podcast.
Anything special about it?
Excalibur, you mean?
Yep.
Outside of it, actually being relatively good King Arthurian adventure fantasy movie. No, not really. I do recommend the actually, at least checking out Excalibur. Has perhaps not aged like fine wine, but still, especially when it comes to movies made about King Arthur, I do think that it is on the higher echelon of products.
More of DP Alex Thompson's works you can see in Legend from 1985. It's the young Tom Cruise flick.
Which also surprisingly good when you take into account exactly like what is the script level wise. The starting off position with the film does rely pretty heavily on Tim Curry's depiction of a demon or Satan or something that is never truly fully explained.
Followed his works in Alien 3 from 1992. Oh, I believe we have seen it. Cliffhanger from 1993, Demolition Man, which suited to Sylvester Stallone in 1993, Hamlet adaptation from 1996, and on and on and on and on. Screenwriters are William Goldstein and James Whitten for the original and Robert Pleas for the sequel. The director Fust was involved in the writing process of both of these films in some capacity as well. Music by Basil Kirchin in the original and then John Gale in the sequel. Kirchin from the first one, he was a musician from a very early age, released a lot of solo albums, performed with others in other bands and had over a dozen film scores. His score, for some reason, wasn't liked by director Fust, which I guess led to the replacement in the second one. Casting, oh boy, we could spend hours here. But Vincent Price here. Vincent Price, of course, plays Dr. Anton Phibes, actor of such of a magnitude that we don't have time for all of this, but he has two stars on Hollywood Walk of Fame for TV and movies, starting over 100 films. Phibes wasn't his 100th film, though, so it was advertised as such, but it's not true. Maybe best known for Edgar Allan Poe adaptations, House of Usher, The Pit and the Pendulum, and The Mask of the Red Death.
Amongst other things, yeah. Those films came around during the 60s, which kind of career-wise, I would say was Vincent Price's the golden age. Not necessarily in the sense that he got into the biggest productions, but more in the liking of during that time he did most appearances in films that even today are held as cult classics. The ones that you named were done with cheap movie producer Roger Corman, all beloved cult classics. This was also the time period he worked heavily with William Castle, with whom he made, for example, Tingler and The House on the Haunted Hill. He also did some, even though most of his body of work perhaps was done with Castle and Gorman during the 60s, he also did have prominent roles in other cult classic films from other producers, like, for example, Witchfinder General and The Last Man on Earth.
And let's name drop some other works from him as well. The Ten Commandments, the 1956 film, and then Tim Burton's Edward Scissorhands from 1990, in which he starred also, and it was his last feature film. He was kind of sick at that time, so he then withdrew from filmmaking and died in 1993.
Yeah, Price was kind of a multi-talented guy. Like before his film career, he had managed to reach a minor in art studies, art history, if I remember correctly. Also had had a degree in English from Yale University and was supposed to continue on art field, like academia-wise, and got into the esteemed academia in London, where he finally found this theater stage and got into acting that wise. Was also very prominent as a voice actor. Some a quality that often is tied with Vincent Price is his very recognizable voice, which helped him to land several audio gigs, for example, in radio dramas like Suspense or the 13th Juror, and well, did do outside of voice acting or voice work and movies, did also work as an art consultant, even though quite on occasion. But for example, did do that marketing or selling fine art educational video for the retail chain Sears, and also was notable gourmet cook.
Yeah.
To a point where he co-authored several cooking books with his second wife.
Like 5 or something.
Like 5. The exact number, I'm not certain about the exact number, how many books he did. But he did do a number of those and had his own cooking show on TV, where, amongst other things, he did share with the world the recipe of how to cook a small boy. Now, some, of course, have claimed that recipe Price did just as a macabre joke, but in all honesty, all the child killers around the world owe a depth of gratitude to Price for his work. Like, fuck, I was running out of space and options trying to bury all the bodies behind my bathroom wall until I did find that recipe. So, thanks a lot, Price.
Priceless.
Yeah. Also was a notable rap artist. MC Pricey Price dropping tweets so sick that they practically made the entire career of one Michael Jackson.
You've totally lost me. Yeah?
Yeah. I'm not shitting you, man. In all seriousness, it's Jackson's Thriller. If you listen to the entire track, like, you can check it out right away. But the track closes on with this small short rap segment. The forest stench in the air, the funk of the 40,000 years segment. And that's actually performed by Price.
Oh yeah, was Vincent Price this actor that I sometimes think about that contributed to really odd things that you would consider youthful until Vincent Price touches on it and you're like, what is this guy doing here?
Kinda, yeah. He also did voice work for example, Disney's animated features. For example, in The Great Mouse Detective, where he voice acts the main bad guy, Professor Ratigan. And he also was one of the OG otakus in America. There's this old behind the set photograph of him from the production of The House of Usher, where he's hanging in the background with Roger Corman, and Price is reading some magazine, which I never have been able to really find out what he is reading, but it is some type of Japanese magazine. I do think that it might very well be a manga album. And Vincent Price, also notable, at least judging by the cover of that magazine, it's not one that has been translated into English, so Price is going it through in the original Japanese language. So with that in mind, all you Sunday school weeaboos can suck on that. Like, your disgusting fruit basket collections have nothing on Vincent Price.
Peter Jeffrey is playing the Inspector Trout in both of these films. He did play roles in Goodbye Gemini, 1970, a psychological horror film, then The Return of the Pink Panther from 1975, the fourth Pink Panther film, then did Midnight Express, 1978, great film. And
those perhaps being his most notable like film appearances outside of Dr. Phibes. With Jeffrey, the thing is that his career is kind of a quilt of many different works, and a surprisingly lot of his appearances appear to be either in direct-to-video movies or then in TV series like Lovejoy or Heartbeat or Yes Minister.
Yes, very prominent on TV. Also has acted in The Adventures of Baron Munchausen from 1988, to name just a few. All in all, this film is kind of loaded with English pretty well-known actors such as Terry Thomas, who plays Dr. Longstreet in the first one, and then Lombardo in the second one. He was an English comedian and character actor and had an incredibly long career in TV, also radio and stage and films.
Yeah, Thomas is not the only actor who they recycle between the two films. Another one is Hugh Griffith, who plays the rabbi character, only in a minor side role in the first one, and then is Harry Ambrose in The Rise of Dr. Phibes. Dr. Phibes Rises Again.
From which we get very naturally to all the James Bond connections that I couldn't help but spot in the film. First of all, we have Milton Reed, who played the henchman Sandor in The Spy Who Loved Me from 1977. He actually did attempt to secure the role of Oddjob in Goldfinger already, but that didn't go through. And he also did appear in Dr. No as a guard. I can't for the life of me remember where that man was in that film, but kind of pretty insignificant role. And Milton Reed in these films, he's playing the guy who gets the metal through his head. What was the guy's name?
I don't remember either. He is the dumb muscle.
Yeah. Seems to be in all films that have something to do with Egypt. Then we have Virginia North, who plays Olympe, the kind of a stepmother, I understand, of the character of Tracy in On Her Majesty's Secret Service, James Bond film, the one-time George Lazenby as Bond film, and he plays Vulnavia in the first Phibes.
Yeah, On Her Majesty's Secret Service perhaps being her most notable, I don't know, notable role, but perhaps the biggest film that she ever got under her belt. The running theme with the ladies of Dr. Phibes films is that all their careers are cut surprisingly short. These Vulnavias never did score that many films under their belt before they retired from acting or transitioned into doing something else.
Yeah, Virginia North did 5 films and was Phibes the last one, the first Phibes, I believe so. Then we have Caroline Munro as photos of Victoria in both of the films. I believe she's never in Flesh and Blood as the Victoria, but I'm not sure.
Well, there is. I'm not entirely certain. Was she playing Victoria in the second one, which does the whole Sleeping Beauty motive?
I've no idea. I've only heard of references to the pictures. That's clear.
And maybe you know, at the very end of the first film, when there is the closing casket which has the mirror on the inside of it, so you could see her in the mirror reflection.
It could be, but I can't tell from those images. I tried to look,
Yup.
but I'm not sure. And she played Naomi in, once again, The Spy Who Loved Me, the sexy baddie with the helicopter. Then we have Sean Burry, who was, it's just for not many seconds in the film, but he plays the HMS crewman in The Spy Who Loved Me. And in the first film of the Phibes story, he is the son of Dr. Vesalius, Lem Vesalius.
All around, there is a surprisingly lot of connections to Phibes found from other films. Kind of what I picked up, I missed all the James Bond stuff. James Bond never being the kind of my area of expertise. I've always left that more to you and Tom in our Bond episodes. But what I picked up was stuff that was later referenced at other films. Like some very obvious parallels can be seen with Dr. Phibes and the Saw movies. Also
Yes.
David, yeah. Both of them has a serial killer who uses really elaborate killing methods. In Phibes, there are not so much traps. In the sequel, there are more traps. So you also get in that jigsaw trap territory with Phibes. But perhaps the most prominent in this department would be in the first film, the final quote unquote killing the death of a firstborn, which has the whole I buried a key under near your son's heart and you had to cut it out stunt.
Yeah, I heard that the first Saw film was inspired very much by that scene from the first Dr. Phibes.
Yeah.
And so I see this very much as some kind of a proto Saw film where we have a character who has some kind of a grudge against a certain group of people and then takes his elaborate vengeance on them. The second one doesn't really have any motive. It's just a random occurrence of killings here and there in elaborate ways, but there are no stakes, and this is what was missing in the second one, amongst other things.
Yeah, other films that also draw apparently influence from Phibes would have been Brian De Palma's rock musical Phantom of the Paradise, where the main hero has this kind of a motorcycle helmet or something that is actually very clearly plays homage to the eagle mask that Phibes uses in the plague of frogs killing in the first film. Also, David Fincher's Seven, they both share a similar type of serial killer who uses a numerical Bible motif in his killings. In Seven, it's the seven deadly sins, and in here, it's the 10 biblical plagues.
Yeah.
And if you count in, especially if you count in the once attempted or planned Dr. Phibes TV series, which would have Dr. Phibes fighting against criminals and being a good guy, from there you can draw like a hell of a strong parallel to the early Sam Raimi movies, more specifically to Darkman, which also has a professor character. In there, he's working in trying to create a synthetic skin replacement to help burn victims, to live, once again be able to hide their scars, and he's attacked by a group of gangsters who completely disfigure him, and then Darkman starts to use his invention to mask himself, masquerade as the gangsters one by one, and this way stealing their identities and causing havoc, much in the same way as Dr. Phibes has Vincent Price looking mask to hide his own disfigurement and were kind of to be able to move freely in the society. And all of these are kind of, I would contribute most sources for the whole who is ripping off who. And well, all around the ripping off argument that often goes hand in hand with the Dr. Phibes films.
So regarding the plagues of Egypt, this is kind of the running theme of the first one. It is one of those countless, what I would actually describe as bro, I swear games that you have in the Bible, where you have God or Jesus who is trying to convince someone of something by playing a game. It goes like this. You have God or Jesus who make something that you would consider as outlandish claims, and then some person doesn't believe it, and then he kind of proves it, quote unquote, but not directly, but by some indirect, elaborate scheme, like such as I'm the Almighty, and you will know by the fact that all your domesticated animals will be dead by tomorrow. And by this evil act, you are supposed to make an illogical leap that this means this is proof of God's existence or something like this. So in this case, we have an angry God who is trying to show off to the Pharaoh that kind of day by day fashion that this God can do even more heinous acts than maybe the Pharaoh himself, and thereby mentally breaking him. And Dr. Phibes kind of follows loosely God's list of these tools of vengeance. And note this, that Dr. Phibes and God, they're all about vengeance.
They are, even though God, especially in the Plagues of Egypt segment, is perhaps even more than about vengeance, is about freeing the Jews, which was the kind of the big deal, or the reason for the plagues, that the plagues were used as a weapon to force the Pharaoh to release the people and let them follow Moses. But when it comes to drawing parallels between God and Phibes, I would say you are right on the money. Phibes is very God-like in Dr. Phibes films, and not just in the way how he kills, like drawing inspiration from Bible, the book of God, but also the way how he behaves and how he presents himself. Like Phibes likes to pride himself as being omnipotent presence in the film's world. And the other characters, especially the Scotland Yard inspectors trying to hunt Phibes, kind of emphasis this by making repeated remarks how Phibes is unstoppable or uncontrollable and how you can't beat Phibes. Like Trout, especially in the second one, Trout starts to really point out how it's even kind of futile to go after Phibes, since Phibes always wins. And much like God, Phibes is someone who really likes to create words for his own image. It it is shown to you in the first one where the Phibes' manner, he has this really elaborate autonomic band members who, well, essentially Phibes has had to pre-program them to play certain songs, as that's mandatory since you are not dealing with live players. So Phibes has created the whole band. He has forced them to play certain songs, and then Phibes acts and pretends like he's composing music. The music has already been composed. Now he just acts as a composer. Gotta have just to have this LARP, like how I am controlling something that I have already built. The second Phibes films takes this perhaps even further, because in their Phibes, once they reach the whole point of the second one is that there is this race against time to reach Egypt and find a secret in Egypt. So Phibes and his adversary, where Phibes has to kind of where Phibes and his opponent Dr. Biderbeck are both raising to get to Egypt and and eventually do get so in the film's some like before film's halfway mark. And well, Egypt is once again kind of a strong God parallel with Phibes, as Phibes now returns back to the country upon which the God unleashed the 10 plagues that Phibes utilized in the first film. And once again, in Egypt, Phibes has this space, this world that he himself has built, as there is some kind of an underground layer where Phibes hides. And it's never actually, the film is really confusing in this sense. Has the lair of the underground temple, has it been built before Phibes, or has Phibes built it himself? Because the film gives you kind of conflicting statements. Phibes himself declares that is his, he has built it, and basically everybody else behaves like it has originally been there. But, whatever the case, the thing now has things like, for example, electricity and other such, so pre-built or not, Phibes most definitely has also taken that location, that space, and made it his own.
I took it as that he has done some nice Art Deco decorations of his own there, but that the temple, or whatever the case is, has been there.
Yeah, it could be, but as mentioned, that the film gives you kind of two conflicting narratives on what exactly is the state of the temple.
The actual plagues from the book of Exodus are turning water to blood, frogs, and third one lice or gnats, depending on the reading, I believe. And the fourth is wild animals or flies. Fifth is pestilence or livestock. Sixth is boils, as in the bees. Seventh is thunderstorm of hail and fire. Eighth is locusts. Ninth is darkness for 3 days. And 10th is death of firstborn. In the film, these plagues do not go in order, and also they are sometimes different from what they are in the Bible story. We have the first kill in the film as bats eating a face. There is no such plague in the story of the Bible, as far as I know, related to bats exactly.
No, I took it that may have been like pestilence or something like that. The vampire bats often drink blood from livestock, and they make viruses and diseases that may, transfer themselves back into the livestock through the act of all the blood sucking.
And the first one of the film that is not shown in the film is related to bees. Bees in his library. It's this investigative team that says this. They're talking of this guy who was killed by bees in his library and thus got the boils. Then we have, there's the sucking blood like a vampire of Dr. Longstreet. So sucking him dry, storing his blood into those bottles. Then we have Hargraves, the much obliged dude, and his frog mask. Then we have the curse of hail in the car. No fire here. In the Bible it's thunderstorm of hail and fire, but we have the hail part in the car. The curse of rats on the plane. There is no curse of rats there, but there's like the fourth curse or the plague is the wild animals or flies, so it was replaced with rats for visual reasons for the film. Sixth is piercing the body with the unicorn statue. I have no idea how to link this to any of these plagues. And seventh is the locusts. And I think the film leaves out completely the third plague, lice or gnats. And fifth, pestilence of livestock. And darkness for 3 days, the plague number 9.
Well, that was supposed to be kind of Phibes burying himself at the end.
I guess. But then the 10th plague, death of firstborn, that was about to happen, but then it didn't happen. So Phibes was unsuccessful in his mission? Hard to say, but he has fun with these victims that he has taken out and goes back to sleep.
Yeah, the film is not exactly successful in following the 10 plagues motif, at least in my opinion. Like, sometimes the connection between the killing and the plagues is loose at best. It's the same way with the first plague, turning water to blood, which does not happen, but which I took was played in the film in the act of the reverse blood transfusion, where Phibes drains one of his victims from blood. But once again, doing that and turning water into blood, it's not exactly the same thing.
No, he kind of improvises with those, and infestation of frogs is not exactly a frog mask. And what I feel is the implication of the first film. I think Dr. Phibes says it pretty clearly that he's about to go into this eternal sleep mode with his beloved wife after this whole revenge mission is over and done with. So it doesn't really make sense for him to rise again in the sequel.
No, it's dumb as all hell. And the sequel, even though I kind of like the sequel more than the first one.
Yeah, same.
Yeah, but I do have to admit that the sequel gets into really rocky start because, well, like you mentioned, him rising again makes no goddamn sense. The sequel kind of have to work around, well, essentially Egyptian magic in order to motivate Phibes or give him a reason to rise again, and then the actual act of rising again, well, that's just playing part of the footage of the first film just backwards. Like at the end of the Abominable, in the end of the first Phibes film, Dr. Phibes essentially kills himself by filling his body with the palming fluid, and this you see this happen. You see the fluid moving, and
Mm-hmm.
when he's rising again, well, that's nothing more that they're just playing that palming fluid, a short clip from that palming fluid scene just backwards, and like palming fluid does not work like that.
Yeah, and I think it's kind of played pretty much for jokes to the entire scene when he rises again and just kind of does this sound with the neck. Everything is it's just making fun of these kind of films, I suppose.
Yeah, and it's that joking, making fun side of the sequel that, in my opinion, makes it work.
But
Like, would they have tried to play it seriously? It would have been an absolute dumpster fire. Since they poke fun of the concept, it actually starts to work. But the main thing is that you can still very clearly see that Dr. Phibes was a film that was never meant to have a sequel or 5 sequels, as it is if you count in the books that came like years later.
yeah, indeed, we can talk about those. There were some book sequels from the original creator of the Phibes character or the original screenwriter. And then there were rumblings of doing the third film, which never materialized. But regarding the starting of the sequel, instead of the slow burn that we have in the first film, you kind of have to figure out what is going on. And I like the aspect that it's a special moment when Dr. Phibes speaks and we get to know this technology that he has built for himself, talking through a gramophone of all goddamn things. So instead of the slow burn, we have the self-explanatory. We have loads of exposition right off the bat, and in the first 5 minutes, you already know what Dr. Phibes is going to be up to, and after that, it's just an occurrence of random killings, one after the other that have really no stakes and don't have really meaning. I guess he's just having fun on his cruise ship. Uh,
He's essentially he's killing because he realizes that he's in a horror film and something has to happen.
yeah, but at least this the character is played by Vincent Price, so I think he's having even more fun in the sequel, acting this character. At least the Pharaoh connection continues here. Egypt and biblical stuff and beautiful poetic lines that have no goddamn sense. Or in the sequel, there's a lot of this. Even though in the first one also you have a lot of this repetition in the poetic lines, here it's just getting a little bit. It's just inserted there, and it's just all the same goddamn thing. Like, now, my beloved wife, we shall be together for eternity. Blah 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 blah.
Oh God, yeah,
Yeah,
extremely strongly this.
yeah,
Phibes goes on and on about his wife and how he's going to resurrect, especially about the fact how much he like longs for the sweet embrace of his wife. It's like basically almost every single scene of Vincent Price in the second Phibes films is just him going on about his goddamn wife to a point where I actually started to feel sorry for Vulvania, who has to help him and just be there on in these numerous occasions where Phibes is just like, well, I so long my wife, and seeing this pillow reminds me of my sweet Victoria, and this fish you have cooked brings back to my mind my sweet Victoria, whose embrace I long so deeply.
Volvania, who I feel that kind of undeservedly gets this side hoe treatment. I know that it sounds horrible, but
But she does.
yeah, it's like she already dies in the first one, then she gets resurrected. I think thanks to Dr. Phibes on this next mission, because he says something like, rise once again, or whatever it is. And then she's there once again to help him. Well, I guess she finally gets what she deserves. She gets into the life of the place of eternal life. She
She
goes
gets
through some kind of a light door with the lights on, and then Dr. Phibes goes through this river.
yeah, it's really weird what she gets at the end. Phibes makes the notion that Vulnavia gets her reward, but what that reward exactly is never actually explained. Like they are chasing the eternal life, so you can kind of think that that's the reward for Vulvania, but the like the eternal life is on a river where you have to take a boat cruise, using the below ground water system tunnels, and Vulnavia just walks into a mirror hallway to a white light and something. So is there like multiple paths to eternal life,
Yeah,
or what? And speaking of the side hoe treatment, the second one is even worse on this regard, because I don't know if is this just the actor just fucking it up, but I swear to God, I noticed that Vulnavia cast some loving and longing gazes to Phibes' direction in the second movie, and all these which I took were emotions of affection are go completely unanswered and even unnoticed by Phibes, who is just about his sweet Victoria and embraces.
yeah. Whereas Virginia North's performance as Full Navy and the first one is more stone faced. Like you get the idea that she's really there to just do her job.
You do. And that's kind of weird difference between these two films, because
Yeah,
the second one does grant you more emotion and more feeling, and usually in movies that means good. Actors showing feeling means good in traditional movie sense, but somehow in Phibes films it's completely the opposite, where the more stone-faced depiction is the one that makes more logical sense with the rest of the movie, and the more feeling one is kind of that just leaves you scratching your head and being like, what exactly are the characters doing?
yeah. Virginia North plays Vulnavia in the first, and Valley Kemp takes over in the second one because Virginia North was pregnant at the time of the second film, and Vulnavia, she wasn't supposed to return as a character, but AIP, the production house, they insisted that she should return, and of course, she is surprisingly healthy after having that acid shower in the first one as a reward for her services.
Yeah,
But it's really her stupidity as well.
a small amount of acid, like 5 liters of the stuff just falling in your face, means nothing. You're fine.
All good. Yeah, can we take a moment to appreciate Vincent Price's ability to kind of dance on the line to make this character work, make it kind of hokey and goofy, but also having the sinister side of it kind of working. If you would have some other actor, it would probably just not work, and you wouldn't be able to communicate what this movie is about.
I would say so too. And that, in my opinion, would go also with very prominent horror film actors. Like, take for example Boris Karloff.
Hmm.
I can't see Phibes working with Boris Karloff at helm. Like the character, in my opinion, wouldn't kind of have this nuance, and wouldn't breathe the way how it breathes under Price's control.
Yeah, there were some discussion online who should take over Dr. Phibes' role in the third one if they ever made one. And I heard a lot of silly notions, but I could perhaps see Ian McKellen pulling it off with those eyes and expressions. But of course, he has some baggage of playing Lord of the Rings and these kind of good-hearted characters. I don't know, but I think it could work.
Well, now that you mentioned McKellen, he's kind of the only one who I can see pulling it off. I don't know. It requires an actor who has very strong case and history both in dark and dramatic, and also comedic parts.
Yeah.
And that's a hard act. I After you mentioning McKellen, I started to think about Sherlock Holmes because McKellen has history playing the character, and from there, um, well, Benedict Cumberbatch came to my mind. If you would want to have someone younger, he
Mm.
perhaps could be able to well at least he would have the range to do the goofy and the dark and dramatic. It's a question mark. Would he have enough to put those two completely different ends together to make a unified performance? Perhaps, perhaps not. Really hard to say.
Most likely, it would have to be again an actor who has an established character to an extent, and not just some unknown. Because maybe it's part of the communication also that people know what kind of actor this is. I don't know.
Yeah, yeah. They would need that because once again the actor playing Phibes couldn't really talk his lines in the movie.
Yeah. Jumping a bit, but also this mechanical, convinced ease of action and killing in the film by Phibes. He's kind of like a character on rails, robotic, automated functioning, where nothing can go wrong, and there's complete trust in his mission. It's kind of like characters from other horror films where you have, well, even Michael Myers who just walks from point A to point B, and he just knows he will not basically fail. He will just keep going like a robot, and this is what happens here.
Yeah, it kind of also plays with that Phibes as a godlike figure because
Yeah.
much like God, Phibes here is being presented as all knowing and all seeing to a point where, well, this is especially clear in the Locust kill, where Phibes can have the knowledge of exactly when and in what way is his target, the nurse he kills, is sleeping. Like he has to know the exact, like picture perfect location just so that he knows to drill the hole exactly into the right place.
What about the humor of these films? Did it work for you? Of course, it's very British, and some of it works, and I think most of it either it doesn't work or it's giving me the kind of idea that once again British humor maybe doesn't just work for me that well.
Um, it did work on occasion.
Yeah, yeah.
I am semi lenient towards British humor. There's a lot of British comedy that I really do like,
Mm.
but I also do know British comedy that have left me completely emotionless. In Phibes films, not nearly all the jokes land, but I would say it's kind of a combination. Some of the jokes do work. Some of them did get a chuckle out of me, but more than perhaps the jokes, perhaps it's the kind of a whimsical nature of the movies that why I really did enjoy them.
Some people know that it seems to kind of lose credibility when they get to the Egypt location, and now Dr. Five suddenly has found some industrial fan for blowing some sand at the desert. Where did he get that fan, and where did he get this and that? I I didn't have this kind of a problem with the film. To be honest,
No,
it's just part of the whimsical nature.
yup. And for example, the industrial fan that you brought up, that is actually a case example. One of the things that why I did like the second Phibes film so much. As a joke, it didn't work for me. I didn't laugh. I laughed
Mm.
more when he used when he used his robotic band members to masquerade them as some kind of a British army regiment
Yeah.
to lure the one guy. But like as a joke, that scene worked for me better than the industrial fan thing. But the industrial fan was something so outlandish and well so stupid, to be exactly frank, that I kind of I just enjoyed the kill, even though absolutely none of it made any goddamn sense in any realm of reality.
Yeah. This film was a little bit rushed. Surprisingly cheap production in parts. Maybe some of the stock footage, maybe the way that the film goes to sleep when they arrive to Egypt. There's nothing really much to do except to follow this archaeologist and his lady friend just arguing about whether he should tell what they are doing there or not, and then is about to be sent off, but sticks there until to the very end. And at no point I was really caring about the relationship.
And no, the relationship itself doesn't work. In fact, none of the relationships in Phibes films work. Phibes and Victoria, Christ, especially in the second one, where Phibes refuses to shut the goddamn up about Victoria. Biderbeck and his wife doesn't work. Phibes and Biderbeck, in my opinion, didn't work. Like the only character relationship that did work, even though even that wasn't completely logical, was Phibes and Dr. Vesalius in the first film.
Mm,
It is the most consistent. Like Phibes makes clear that he's about revenge, and
yeah,
revenge wise, Vesalius and Phibes work.
yeah. It's a funny thing. I think I have very similar feelings to yours. That of course the first film is when you kind of think about the structure. It's the better film, but then the ending is kind of a lackluster in my opinion. That Phibes just goes back to his beauty sleep, and then in the second one there's not a hell of a lot to do or to observe or to build on or anything. But it's a more fun film. I think it's a funnier film also, the second one.
Yeah, the first one, when it comes to the very ending with Phibes, it, in my opinion, it kind of suffers from the fact that Phibes is so omnipotent. And perhaps that's the reason why well, nobody can actually beat Phibes. So the only way how the film could come to an conclusion is that, well, Phibes essentially kills himself at the very end. Because nobody manages to do anything about Phibes in the first one. There's the whole Scotland Yard investigation where, well, the investigation manages to figure out that Phibes did not die in the car accident, and they managed to figure out the reason why Phibes is after the doctors, but the cops never managed to like save any of the doctors in any way. They all die except Vesalius, who manages to save his son purely on his own accord. They don't manage to ever find Phibes' location. Phibes actually has to like phone them to let them know where he's hiding, so that the good guys can come to him. So when basically Phibes has to tell you, I'm here, come get me, in order for the coppers to actually show up and the Vesalius to know, well, where Phibes is. You kind of paint such of a strong villain that it would then be completely anticlimactic if the cops would like finally during the last 3 minutes be able to shoot Phibes, or if they would light the building on fire and Phibes would be caught inside of a collapsing building or something like that, which is usually the way how these type of horror films end.
Although, interestingly, in both of these films, Dr. Phibes makes a mistake. Yeah, in the first one, he drops the amulet in the blood-sucking moment to the apartment floor, and in the second one, he loses the sarcophagus key for a second.
Yeah.
So he is not almighty, I guess.
He's not almighty, but none of these really actually, in the end, they don't result in anything.
Yeah.
The losing of the amulet, plot-wise, the only thing that it means is that the Scotland Yard inspectors are able to, well, they are able to realize that it's if the symbol is Hebrew, which leads them to the rabbi, who explains them that it relates to the ten plagues, from which the inspectors finally realize that Phibes is killing according to the plagues. And in the second one, the losing of the key doesn't really mean anything else except the fact that Phibes has to really quickly sneak into the Biderbeck's camp and kill one dude and just steal the whole goddamn sarcophagus back.
Yeah, the art deco of the film in the sets, and the sets in general, I think, are a very major character and part of the film, and how they are much better for it than if you would just make the sequel and it would be without the art deco. So those are kind of a really impressive sets, and then it kind of sets the mood and gives more prestige for these films. I did pay attention to these films in the way that these are films that have been made before the internet and the internet porn, like checking out shadow figures of naked ladies and even cardboard ladies. Like, oh, the times before internet porn when one could get excited about this kind of things. Now this kind of obsessions seem even somehow creepier than...
I would maintain that was lackluster and lame even in times before internet porn.
Hopefully.
Like goddamn, if anyone of our listeners know that there sometime has been a big market for a shadow figure pornography, no. Please let us know. PM us on our Facebook page, because that is something so dumb that I refuse to believe it. And if it's proven to be correct, I most definitely want to learn about it and perhaps lose a piece of my soul with that knowledge.
And finally, to twist the dagger in the second film a little bit further, it's an awfully written film, except for some of the jokes, but the globe-trotting part, and in that way you have kind of more different locations where to wander, and some of the impressive set pieces still, they keep you watching the film. So I'm a little bit split on this film.
To me, the biggest problem with the second one is that there really is no motive to Phibes' killings.
No.
Like there is no running theme with them, or not at least a running theme that I could see. Like in the first film, as already heavily established, Phibes kills according to 10 biblical plagues. And that's fine, but I didn't manage to figure out according to what Phibes does his killings in the second one. Like there is like he uses that scorpion statue trap.
That's a pretty cool one.
That's a pretty cool one, but like as a kill, what does it mean?
Yeah.
There's also the really elaborate sarcophagus murder that Phibes does, which also was really cool to see and really funny and fun kill. But once again, why sarcophagus? Like, what was the running point? The only kind of explanation, like metaphor-wise, that I could come up with was that it's Phibes is kinda killing in accordance to previous British expeditions to Egypt, which were like old professor dudes going to Egypt and stealing Egypt's national treasures, breaking into the sacred pyramids and stealing the sarcophaguses and the mummified bodies, stuff that didn't belong to them. But hey, since they were British, they could just go in there and make the claim that this is ours now, and shipped it back to Britain. Kind of with that logic, you could perhaps see a case where Phibes is a quote-unquote avenging spirit of the Egypt, where now that there is once again yet another British expedition to Egypt, Phibes targets this expedition, and where the previous ones have taken bodies and sarcophaguses out from Egypt, now Phibes leaves bodies to Egypt, and more specifically leaves British bodies to Egypt. But it kind of doesn't hold water because Phibes himself is a Brit in the films, and the second one because, well, Beiderbecke's expedition is the only British expedition to Egypt that precisely is not about stealing Egypt's national treasures and shipping them back to Britain. Like the world that Beiderbecke's expedition breaks into, it's not an Egyptian pyramid or sacred location, it's Phibes' digs. The sarcophagus that they steal it does not belong to any Egyptian king or pharaoh. It's Phibes'. So it's Brits stealing from other Brits. Which once again I remake the question. So then, why the Scorpio statue? Why the sarcophagus kill? Except if the case is not that, because we usually in West we tie things like sarcophagus and scorpions. We tie them with Egypt, which makes them exotic. So Phibes' whole motive for his killings is just that, hey, exotic.
And if you would take, dear listeners, this film's plot structure and try to condense it, you could just take the opening monologue of Dr. Phibes and then travel to Egypt by the ship, and then just go into your chamber and play your little music there, and then wait for the syzygy that the planets are aligned, blah blah blah, and then do a bunch of these My Lovely Victoria speeches and sail into the eternal life chamber, and that's the film. But the thing is that I guess Dr. Phibes has to wait for that syzygy moment, so in the meanwhile, while he's bored, he's just killing off these people because he has nothing else to do.
Kinda, yeah. Kinda, yeah. This was also something that I took notice upon when checking out the films. Phibes' motives for his kills, or the reasoning behind the murders, it's loose at best. I ran into, when doing the background works, I ran into this repeated argument that you sympathize with Phibes' murders in the first one, since Phibes is lashing out of grief, and Phibes makes the notion that he's avenging the murder of his wife.
I never bought that this would be like that the doctors would have been doing anything particularly wrong. It's just it's just Phibes, interpreting that they weren't doing enough while they probably were.
Yeah, Phibes just accuses the doctors and does all the killing. Well, because, well, god damn it, surgery is never 100% guaranteed success rate.
Yeah.
Like, but not every surgery always works, especially if it's a really difficult one, as it apparently was with Phibes' wife. So there really is no murder to avenge. But with that, I can, well, at least I can't sympathize, but I can at least see the reasoning behind this. Phibes is a man who has been broken by grief, and now he just lashes out kind of mindlessly.
And how hopeless would have this surgery been, even if you have to avenge like 8 or 9 doctors for it? If nobody can do it out of these gentlemen that are probably kind of highly qualified doctors, then I think Dr. Phibes is losing ground here.
Yeah, and one of the locust victim is nothing but a nurse.
Oh yeah, what?
Like a person whose only job was to be there in the operating room and help the doctors by passing them instruments and stuff like that. Like,
yeah.
What? but the goddamn motive in the second movie makes even less sense. If you can believe it. Essentially, in the second one, Phibes is killing. But the whole motive for Phibes to rise again is that there's a legend about magical waters in buried, somewhere beneath the ground of Egypt. And the first killings happened because Phibes has had this in his possession. This ancient papyrus that showcases somehow the location where the rivers are found. And well, Biderbeck has bought the papyrus to himself after what happened at the first film. So Phibes kills his first victim to steal the papyrus back. Okay, Biderbeck has already deciphered the papyrus and kind of knows at least vaguely where to go with his expedition. So both Phibes and Biderbeck head to Egypt. And then in Egypt, Biderbeck's crew, well, they steal the sarcophagus with Phibes' wife in it. So now Phibes kills two people because of it. Well, no, one people. The first one, the scorpion statue trap, happens even before the sarcophagus is being stolen. So that kill just happens just because. And then there is the third kill, which is the fake British military regiment decoy kill, which Phibes orchestrates just so that he can steal Biderbeck's wife to put her as a trophy into yet another trap. And
yeah,
like the whole situation would have been easily solved if Phibes wouldn't be such a selfish asshole. Like, why can't Phibes just let Biderbeck have some of the goddamn water? The film makes the notion that it's a river of life, or the waters of life flow in the river, or something like that. And rivers are researching supply of water. Like that's the whole idea of a river. More water comes into rivers. That's how you get a river. It's not a goddamn puddle of water. Something that you could drain in 5 sips. So why on earth can't Phibes just make a deal with Biderbeck if there is kind of like an endless supply of water of life? Just say to the man that, sure, Biderbeck, come with me. Take your wife with me. The first gulp of water, eternal life, water of life, goes to my wife. Your wife gets the second, I get the third, and you get the fourth. And we can all share the river of life. But no, with Phibes, it has to be all for himself.
Because Biderbeck is the guy who stole the papyrus.
Well, he didn't even steal it. He bought it.
Well, I guess he bought it, yeah, but from Phibes' perspective again.
Well, from Phibes' perspective, yeah.
That's a very...
Perhaps, but still, you kill like 5 people because you just can't compromise on a goddamn river of all damn things. I would have understood this more if it would have been like a soda bottle of life. Like something where there is a limited quantity of the thing you want. But it's a goddamn river. And I'm like, why Phibes? Why all this mayhem?
Yeah, it's a bit frustrating to not see where Dr. Phibes goes. It's not necessary, but always from the very first time I saw the film, I was kind of wishing that you could see more of what we've been waiting for. And I'm not sure what happens in the end. Is Biderbeck now in some kind of a lethal water that will actually make you die or get old in a matter of seconds? Or it's just the film showing you that, well, you didn't get to drink the nectar of eternal life, so this is kind of the representation of what happened to his body during the next following years, as human body does.
I kind of took it that it was something more like that.
Yeah.
That film makes the notion how Biderbeck is out of time, since he has had this some kind of a life-longing elixir where he got it, and why can't he have more? Who knows? But he has had a supply of that, and that's what he has been using for a couple of centuries now. And he is on his very last bottle on his very last drops even. And as Phibes floats with his wife and leaves Spider-Beck behind, I guess the film is saying that was the moment when Spider-Beck finally ran out of time, and now he's aging super fast to make up the time that he has, like make up all the aging that he has previously been able to avoid through his magical elixir. It's kind of like the whole goblet thing in the Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, like where the one dude at the very end ages like rapidly because
Yeah.
he drank from the wrong cup. Kind of similar type of situation, but happens because Spider-Beck no longer has any drops left of his elixir.
Well, there is no way to save face for Dr. Phibes. He could have used some Korean. He could have used some Korean 10-step skin routine, but I think that would have not been very useful. So I can see where he's coming from. At least he will live forever.
Yeah, I don't know if that's a good thing for Victoria though. Like I know that the marketing line in the first line of posters for the first film was that love is to never have to say you are ugly.
Yep.
But still
Still.
like Phibes is using a rubber mask. It's either going to deteriorate at some point or it's going to fall off, and Victoria is gonna see the horrible face of disfigured Phibes. Perhaps she kills herself at that moment.
Yeah, interesting little tidbits about the third Phibes film, which never happened. AIP was looking for scripts for the third film, but they never find a suitable one. There were some proposed titles for this: Phibes Resurrectus, The Bride of Dr. Phibes, and The Seven Fates of Dr. Phibes. And one of these ideas that was worked on was that Victoria would have been successfully resurrected in the third, but that she would have been perhaps even more insane murderous maniac than her husband. And I don't know, there could be some relationship problems, for sure, spending an eternity together. But there are these sequels in a novel form, as we were discussing. The first two have been made into novel form, and from none other than the original character creator, William Goldstein. He wrote the books regarding the first films and also the novels Dr. Phibes in the Beginning and Dr. Phibes Vulnavia's Secret. And there's been some other adaptations of sorts, but I think these are the key books.
Yeah, I can't really say anything about them. I do know they exist, but in preparation for today's episode, I didn't even make an attempt to look them up or even go through any kind of a plot summary about what happens in those.
Yeah, because unlike Dr. Phibes, we don't have a time of eternity to go through this. But would you like to see a third Phibes film, Henrik, at this point?
Uh, Kinda yeah and kinda no.
Because you know that it will probably not be the same anymore.
It as already Dr. Phibes Rises Again showcases us, it's really hard to pick up from where the previous Dr. Phibes film ends. And I coming from that, it always fills my heart with dread when I know that somewhere a Hollywood production house
Yeah.
or even British production house is trying to attempt to continue from somewhere that ended up in a way that it's really hard to continue. Like Dr. Phibes Rise Again barely makes it, and it mostly makes it because it realizes that it has to play the whole resurrection thing for laughs and not spend too much time, like barely, not even 5 minutes, thinking the resurrection through. Just get it over with quickly and do it for laughs. And you just made it with that one.
Yeah.
And I really don't know if like if they would make it work, I would be really happy to see a third Phibes film. I do think that there's a plenty of enjoyment to be still to be found from Phibes, and especially all the elaborate killings. But there's always a risk. There's always a risk that they just fucked it up because the starting point for your race is such of a difficult. Like the first step is so difficult to take.
Yeah, if they ever make the third one, I suppose it's gonna be just a reimagination of the original storyline.
Most likely.
Or the storyline of the two films, which probably wouldn't work. You just would maybe want to do the original storyline and then kind of put some more oomph into the ending.
The most likely scenario would be that it would be a remake once again, because that's exactly what movie production houses love to do whenever they are fresh out of ideas, and even if they are not. Like, it's the cheapest and easiest road to take in any given situation. Just do a remake.
Yeah, it doesn't make any sense for me to continue the exact same storyline that ended in 1972 with the film that is made in 2025 or something.
I don't know. If there would be a third Phibes film, I would prefer it to actually follow from Rises Again.
Yeah.
And that's exactly why I feel that it's such a difficult task, that I kind of hope that there never will be a third Phibes film.
Yeah.
I would want one, but the odds of them fucking it up are so great here that I kind of don't have the courage to take that gamble.
Similar sentiments from here. This is carried a lot on Vincent Price's shoulders, especially the second part, where my special mention for an actor goes, of course, to Vincent Price for his enthusiasm for the role that he carries these films forward with his flamboyant act and all the twisting faces and the theatrical line deliveries successfully too. What about for you?
I go with Vincent Price also, precisely for the same reasons. The second best one, in my opinion, would go to Joseph Cotton, who plays Dr. Vesalius in the first one. Him and Price, I do feel that are the strongest like performances in the Phibes films. As much as I also did love Robert Quarry as Dr. Biederbeck, but in my opinion, Cotton and Price are the ones who really duel it out on screen, as they also did, behind the screen, because Cotton, especially at first, was kind of really not taking to Price, who he felt got off too easily, because Price didn't have to remember his or know his lines when they were shooting, as all his dialogue was inserted in post. Of course, this didn't mean that Price didn't know his lines. Price was known for the fact that he had a remarkable capability to memorize things, which helped him a lot as an actor, as he could just, remember everybody's lines simply, from reading the script through just a couple of times.
Yeah, that is a masterful ability. You have to be, I think, very visual in your mind that you're able to connect the dots so well.
Or it's once again some kind of a weird, genetical thing that just happens on a handful of people, and Vincent Price just happened to land on the lucky die.
That helps. What resonated with me the most in the film series, or these two films overall, I think just Dr. Phibes. Dr. Phibes is a very creative character still, and it would be fun to see more what could be done with it.
To me, it's kind of more of the spirit of these movies. They are very loose, kind of air. Well, I don't know, airy, perhaps airheaded in the way how they work. There's a certain amount of just style, purely for the fun of having style. Like, for example, the organs that Dr. Phibes plays, which is a combination of goddamn red plastic discs that do absolutely nothing except to look cool. And most of Phibes' killings in reality are done in a way that just looks cool. They are extremely impractical to pull off, and they rely on circumstances playing like 100% on Phibes' hand, and
Yeah.
all the characters completely being like absolutely unaware about the things that just happen around them or just the room next to them. But all of this they kind of fuels into this kind of a childish approach of simply having fun. And to me that's what Phibes films most are. They are fun.
That it is, and but in a one adjective, how would I describe these films? This may sound rough when I think about everything that we have been discussing today. They are fun, but what I wrote here is unpolished because, as you maybe said, that they are airy. They are kind of full of air. It's not completely tight and foolproof, but there's so much to like there that still I enjoy these films.
Yeah, that's kind of the thing with Phibes. Phibes are movies that you shouldn't think too much. Like we are doing a disservice here by covering them in the podcast because the flick lab is something that requires that you look something very closely and you think it, at least try to think it very clearly. And Phibes is something that you most definitely shouldn't think. You should just turn your brain off and just watch them, because by God, if you apply any level of reason and logic to the Phibes movies, they immediately start to fall. Like the pieces start to fall immediately.
What was your adjective?
To me, it's still just boring and plain fun.
Would you consider to watch this ever again?
Uh Actually, most likely, yeah. I was, even though I did know coming to watching these films, I did know that they are being held to a cult film status. But cult films can be kind of hit and miss experiences. A lot of them are misses. But I was kind of surprised exactly how much fun I still ended up having with Dr. Phibes, even though I did get kind of on a rocky start with the movies, because it did take me a time to realize exactly how little of thinking I was supposed to do with something that still is a cult film. But once I once the films kind of clicked with me, I really did enjoy them, and I can see that I will revisit them, perhaps even quite soon.
I had this kind of feeling when starting the first Doctor Phibes now that, oh boy, what is Henrik gonna think of me and these choices? Is this gonna be again one of those films that I really liked when I was a kid and now I don't see what the hell that was all about? But as it started to get rolling a bit, yeah, those things that are there to be liked, they just about save it. Would I watch this ever again? Yeah, sure. Sure. Not immediately. Someday, why not? Honey, wanna watch some Doctor Phibes? Okay.
Yeah, these are kind of nice, like lazy lazy Sunday afternoon or lazy Sunday evening. Grab a bag of popcorn and get on the sofa and just watch Dr. Phibes because nothing is on telly.
And I'm kind of curious to hear what other people in my company would say about this film, what they feel about it, whether they find it more funny than I did, or what else kind of resonates with them. Do I think the films have any staying power legacy? Obviously, they have a cult status, so not more much to say about that.
Yeah, you summarized it actually perfectly. They are cult films and they are cult films for a good reason.
There you go. Henrik, oh boy, Would you recommend the Dr. Phibes films?
Surprisingly lot, yes. Like once again, Phibes is not perhaps the most typical the flick lab material, or the type of film that usually earns a recommendation here. We have tried these kinda knowingly stupid horror and other genre films in the flick lab previously. Like, for example, in Zombie Strippers, which ended up into a drunken battle between the two of us.
I don't want to remember that.
So it's way better that you made it out to be you cruel bastard. So in that regard, experiences like Phibes, they are always there's always a camp, there's always a risk that the person you show it doesn't really get it. But I do think that when it comes to these type of films, films that wants to be loose, Phibes is actually one of the better examples, and it succeeds in what it sets out to be way better than most. Like a good example is that we both kind of agree upon the films. We agree on the same kind of problems that the movies have, and we did not end up fighting each other like we did on the Zombie Strippers episode. So on that regard, yes, I recommend the checking out Dr. Phibes movies, and I do think that these are much safer bet than for example Zombie Strippers was.
Oh yeah, no doubt about that. I do, but
You just had a problem because it was set in a strip club.
I had an alcohol problem. And I started to sexually harass Henrik almost. Never again.
We can say that we both experienced movie magic on that recording session.
Studio magic for sure.
It's a studio magic.
I think the first one is important to see. And I kind of realize how much it has influenced the following films, like The Exorcist 3 perhaps, and the Saw films or what have you, serial killer movies who have some elaborate kill scenes. When it comes to the second part, yeah, as stated 100 times, it doesn't exactly succeed technically, but it is relative amount of fun, but still that fun is kind of there. Well, it's kind of the second one is dancing so much on the line that I think it doesn't really stay on balance, and the guy walking on the line falls off. So, but if you enjoyed the first one, I believe you will have fun with the second one. So go ahead. But if these kind of things are not really your thing, I would say that still watch the first one for educational reasons and for some fun reasons and know what the hell this is all about. And then maybe skip the second one. Yeah, but generally speaking, recommendation for the first one. And I do like things in the second one, but not quite enough for a recommendation.
Yeah, I feel that the first one is mandatory viewing if you are planning to check out Dr. Phibes movies. It kind of eases you into the whole experience. And my recommendation is that you most definitely you start with the first movie. If Dr. Phibes Rises Again would be your first experience with these films, perhaps too of a rocky start. It might even ruin the first one for you.
Yeah, there's no
So
character. They don't intro the character in any way. It's just, everything has been already tackled in the first one, and it's building on that first one.
yeah, so if you are going to check this out, you haven't seen this before, most definitely watch them in the right order.
Yeah. You really know you are watching Dr. Phibes films, Henrik. When?
When a whole bunch of locusts trap you into some kind of weird sarcophagus thing that's closing around you, and weirdly placed industrial fan is blowing air right next to your ear, and none of it makes any goddamn sense.
Still having fun. You really know you're watching Dr. Phibes films when you give a helping hand to an Art Deco obsessed zombie vampire and you're rewarded for it with an acid shower. I don't know, man. Watching this film, I'm feeling confident that we should have favorite quote back here on this podcast. Any favorite quotes?
Actually, no. I have to confess that ever since we dropped that from the quickies list, I kinda just stopped paying that much attention to movies, because trying to pick up and find your favorite quote in any given film in the past, it was just hell of a lot of work.
Can we have it back, please, 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 please?
I say absolutely nothing on that matter. Silent content.
I like this one. So I came down to find some aspirins. The door was open a bit, and as I looked through, there he was. And then I rang for you lot. And that's all? Well, that's enough for one night. Or Phibes quotes. My love, sweet queen and noble wife.
Oh God, no! Stop the sound immediately. I'm not listening to all the sweet Victoria monologues again.
But this is the best one, the most famous one. I think this was borrowed from somewhere, but I'm not so sure. I think there's some lines that have been borrowed from somewhere.
Well, there's a lot that has been borrowed elsewhere, also in Dr. Phibes, since we made the whole, movies that rip off, or mentioned the argument about ripping off previously in the podcast. It's something good to remember. Dr. Phibes also borrows influences heavily, extremely heavily from films that have come before Dr. Phibes. So it's not really a blameless victim of anything.
Anyway, I alone remain to bring delivery of your pain. Severed, my darling, too quickly from this life of fires drawn and of memories met. I shall hold our two hearts again in single time. Okay. I do enjoy these quotes too much.
You can have your own, very own, separate podcast, which is Karri's film quotes.
Oh boy. Well, here we have been once again to dissect some quality films, Henrik. What is our next victims?
I don't know, but victim sounds right about right.
Oh boy, oh boy. Would it be Steven Seagal's time to show up in this podcast? Because I mandate so.
Is there enough space on this podcast and our hard drives for Steven Seagal?
Oh yeah. Well, at least the duration of 6 movies. First we would go through Above the Law, his first hit film.
Yeah, you have to cover that if you are talking about Steven Seagal.
Oh yes, sir. And then Under Siege, which had that sequel film as well, and the first one is considered one of the better Seagal films.
If not even his best.
Followed by Fire Down Below, this toxic waste story about environmentalism, which is really important for Steven Seagal. And On Deadly Ground, the film that he himself directed. And Attack Force, a complete dumpster fire. And then Beyond the Law, his latest film, to see what he's been up to lately.
Outside of goddamn Krispy Kremes.
I think that's a fair list, to see all the different nuances and colors of the rainbow. Thank you for joining us. See you in a fortnight.
Until then.
There is no way to save face for Dr. Phibes.
Se on se, mitä Phibes menee ja pöllii takaisin silloin siinä teollisuustuuletin hommelissa. Previous British expeditions to England. Teollisuustuuletin hommelissa. Soda bottle of life. Teollisuustuuletin hommelissa.
That didn't entirely work. Let's start again.
Teollisuustuuletin hommelissa.
A lot of solo album.
Teollisuustuuletin hommelissa.
My love, sweet queen and noble wife.
Oh god, no. Teollisuustuuletin hommelissa. Phibes and Biederbeck, in my opinion, didn't work. Teollisuustuuletin hommelissa. That did work. Teollisuustuuletin hommelissa. Vesalius and Phibes work. Teollisuustuuletin hommelissa. I just enjoyed the kill. Teollisuustuuletin hommelissa. Even though teollisuustuuletin hommelissa. Absolutely none of it made any goddamn sense in any realm of reality. Siinä teollisuustuuletin hommelissa.
The Abominable Dr. Phibes. Tohtori epätavallisin keinoin. Lepakkoja, meiläisiä, naamioita, ipanoita, apinoita. Nämä edustavat Raamatun 9 vitsausta, ainakin melkein. Rikokset suunnitellut mies on mielipuoli uronsoittaja. Etsivä on nimellään, kunnes huomaa rikoksia ylistävän tekijän. Kaikki tohtorit olivat epäonnistuneesti hoitaneet Dr. Phibesia. Mutta kun hän ei voi olla syönyt. Hän on kuollut.